Good day, good day. Once again, this is Pastor Theo with another mini midweek meal. I've missed being able to do these mini midweek meals the last couple weeks. Had things going on after service, so I look forward to this particular week. I hope that you are doing well as we have entered into this time of Lent. And so I wanted to just give some background on why we celebrate Lent and from a scriptural standpoint, how it gives us an opportunity to try to emulate and imitate what Christ did when he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. And I looked at the account in Matthew, the account in Mark, and the account in Luke, because each gives different distinctions. But I think one of the most important things were the fact that first and foremost is that Jesus was led by the Spirit. Oftentimes we find ourselves in deserted places, wilderness, we go through temptations and trials, but we can't always say it's because we were led there by the Spirit. Sometimes, and even most often, we're led there by our own flesh. These are the consequences of our choices. We did foolish things and now we're getting tested and we find ourselves having consequences. And now we want to say, where is God in all this? Whereas Jesus, it was led by the Spirit. And in Mark's account, it actually says he was drove by the Spirit. He was led in such a fashion that it was irresistible. He was drawn out forcibly almost in terms of the thrusting into this time of setting himself apart. And imagine what it would be like to be in the wilderness, to be in a deserted place for 40 days and 40 nights, not just fasting from food, but he's away from people. He's away from the cares of this world. What would that look like for us today in terms of turning off our technology, just getting out to a place where it is just us and God? And we read that while he was after he fasted, Satan came to him and tempted him, tested him. And in the Greek, that talks about proved and tried. And so we read in Matthew 3 at the end, when Jesus was baptized and the Spirit fell upon him, and then a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." So the Father was pleased in his Son, Jesus. He's basically saying, I know who he is. I know what type of son he is. I know what type of brother he is. I know what type of follower he is. I know what type of Jesus he is. I know all about him, and everything that I know about him and all that he has done, I am well pleased. And immediately after, when God says, I can vouch for his character, we see that Jesus is tried. He is tested. He is proved. That should remind us of Job. Job was someone who was upright and blameless. And immediately after, Satan was saying, yeah, he's like that now, but I bet if you touched him and took things away from him, I bet if you cursed him, I bet then he would curse you. You would see that he's not the man that you think he is. And now Satan is trying to do something similar, trying to show that Jesus is not the man that the Father thinks he is. And he tempts him in the area of his need. Because when we read that he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, we read that Jesus was hungry. That wasn't just a normal hunger, it was an earnest desire. There was a need that needed to be met. And Satan came and says, hey, I can meet the need. Matter of fact, I'll challenge you and encourage you to meet the need yourself. You don't have to wait on the Father to provide for you. You being your Father's son, you being God, you being all that, if your Father's so pleased with you and you got all this power and authority, why don't you turn these stones to bread and end your misery in terms of your hunger? So there is a process that Jesus is going through. And what Satan is saying is you could end the process prematurely. You could give yourself some relief. All you got to do is eat now. And Jesus says, no, it is written that man should not live on bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. He quotes scriptures. He does not speak on his own behalf. He does not speak his own words. He speaks the word of God. And then it says Satan took him up to a high place, the pinnacle of the temple, and says, hey, throw yourself over, because it's written that he would give charge over your angels lest you dash your feet. So they'll swoop you up and keep you from dying. But he says it is also written that thou should not tempt thy God. And the test in this one is different than when it says Satan tempted Jesus. When it says Satan tempted Jesus or came to tempt Jesus, in the Greek, it simply means to try, to prove, to test. But when it says that we should not tempt God, now this tempt is different in the Greek. It is saying it's an exceedingly unwarranted testing. It's saying that you would have an unreasonable testing that goes beyond normal boundaries and limits. And it's not to say that God is limited, because God is unlimited. But what it is saying is that if God is who he says he is, he should not need to be tested, because his character is proven. He is consistent. He is unchanging. He is unwavering. He is always faithful. So why test him? Why go out of your way to say, let me see if God really is God, when God has done nothing to show that he is not? He has always shown that he is who he said he is. He has never done anything that would call into question whether he is God or not. So we should not test him. And then it gets to the crux of the temptation. When Satan says, especially in the Luke account, that all authority I have over all the kingdoms of this earth, and I have been given the right to freely give this authority to whom I please. So I'm going to give it to you, and all you have to do is bow down and worship me. So he's telling the son that all these things can be yours, and all you got to do is bow down and worship me. But we established through scriptures that Jesus' authority, Jesus' dominion, Jesus' power comes from the Father. And we do read that Satan was the ruler of this world. So he did have that power and authority and dominion over this world. But we also read that when Jesus receives all authority, all power in heaven and earth, he received it from the Father. When Jesus refers to the Father, he says, the Father has given all things into my hands. So the Father has already done that for Jesus. It's just a matter of time before he fully receives it. And part of the prerequisite for him fully receiving all power, heaven, and authority in heaven and earth is that he completes his task, which is to die. He died that we may be saved, and the byproduct of that dying is that he becomes ruler and king over all. And he eventually gives that kingdom back to the Father. So what we have in essence is Satan saying, your Father has told you that all this will be yours, and he's requiring that in order for you to inherit these things, you have to die. You have to go to the cross. He says, Jesus, we know you don't want to do that. We know you don't want to go to the cross. In the garden, Jesus says, is there a way for this cup to pass? Is there another way to accomplish your will? But then he comes to himself and says, no, not my will, but your will be done. So Satan is being real slick right now. He's being opportunistic. So he offers Jesus another way. Yes, you can have the authority. Yes, you can have power. Yes, you can rule over all this thing. And the way I'm offering it to you, it will not cost you your life. All it's going to cost you is for you to worship me, i.e., disobey your father, i.e., prematurely abort the process that your father sent you for, and then turn your back on all for yourself. And Jesus once again goes to the word of God. So we may find ourselves in situations where God has made us promises, and God desires that our character be tested and proved. And we're going to have temptations come that's going to tempt us to clock out of that process prematurely because it's uncomfortable, because it's painful, because we don't want to go through the process. We want the product without the process. But Jesus says, nonetheless, not my will, but my Father's will be done, and we should respond the same way. Remember the tribulum. It says we need to stay under the tribulum long enough because it produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and that character produces hope. And our hope is in the glory of Jesus, and our hope does not fail. If we have that hope, let us not abandon it. Let us not forfeit it. Let us not rob God of any glory by prematurely abandoning the process. When temptations come, let us be submitted to God, resist the enemy, and he shall flee. And we do so by standing not on our own words, not in our own power, not in our own strength, but on the word of God, and remembering that our Father is pleased with us. And if you know that our Father is pleased with us, how might that order your next steps? What would you do once you know that the Father is pleased? Are we going to do things that glorify him, or are we going to do things that glorify ourselves, glorify this world, or glorify Satan? Let us not bow down and worship any but our God, and let us do so in a way that all should know that he is God. Take care. Once again, this is Pastor Theo. God bless.